Welcome back, sports fans. Rob Webster, once again coming to you from deep in the heart of Texas. Today we're going to review our week one results. We're going to take a look at fantasy football for week two. But let's get down to business. Let's look at week one results. Week one was a brutal week. So, who did we like in week one? We like Dak Prescott. Now, a lot of times I'll give myself a push if there's an injury, but Dak Prescott was doing nothing that game. So that's a fail. Tom Brady, we're going to give ourselves a push there. He got into double digits fantasy points wise. Didn't have quite the game. Chris Godwin went out with an injury. Julio Jones is no Chris Godwin. Dallas was doing nothing. They didn't need to move the ball, so Tom Brady just did okay. Lamar Jackson, that was a good one. He did well against the Jets, 19 fantasy football points. Running backs, Joe Mixon had 19 points against the Steelers, did really well. Could have done better if they hadn't turned the ball over so much. So expect good things from Joe Mixon this coming year. Alvin Kamara played with an injury. I'm going to give myself a push on that one. He was not 100%, did not factor into the offense at all. Travis Etienne, that's a fail. He didn't show up. James Robinson claimed his starting spot and looks to be in there for the foreseeable future. Wide receiver, Alan Lazard. We're going to give ourselves a push there. He was injured. Green Bay did nothing without him. So hopefully when he gets back, he'll see a lot of targets. Allen Robinson on that Thursday night game, I don't even know if he played. So we're going to give ourselves a fail on that one. He did not do well. 1 fantasy point. And A.J. Brown with the Eagles against the Lions did really well. 22 points. Had a solid game. Expect a lot of good things from him. Tight ends, Dawson Knox was injured early in that game. I'm going to give myself a push there. Just didn't factor in. Got pulled down early on by a horse collar. Was not the same after that. Cole Kmet, I don't know if he even played. So we didn't see him much. Justin Fields looked lost in that game. So until that offense gets its bearings, don't expect much from any skill player other than the running back there in Chicago. Zach Ertz, 10 fantasy points, so he did all right. Who I didn't like, Tua, he did okay. He had 13 points. We're going to give ourselves a push there. So he didn't do all that great, but didn't do terrible. Trey Lance, only 9 fantasy points, did not look good. Trey Lance is going to be a good player in this league, in the fantasy football sense, but not right now. He's got to get a grasp of that Kyle Shanahan offense. Once he does, point machine, and he needs George Kittle out there. He needs all his weapons healthy, and a new running back come in. There was just a lot of moving parts there. They'll find their bearings down the road. Najee Harris, touchdown bailed him out. He had 10 fantasy points, but other than that, he had nothing yardage wise. Wasn't catching any passes. So that's a victory there. Josh Jacobs, 5 fantasy points, was a non-factor. Once again, it was good to stay away from him. Tyreek Hill had 14 fantasy points. We're gonna give ourselves a push on this one, only because most of his points came from these little short outs they were doing. He was just targeted. Their game plan was to get the ball into his hands. It wasn't to run an offense. And so you saw the results. So if they're going to continue to do that, then Tyreek Hill's a good player to have in your arsenal. Deebo Samuel against Chicago. He was just okay. He did not score a lot of points there. Darren Waller, Kansas City, for the Raiders, was just okay. Derek Carr looked a little lost. Kyle Pitts was the other one I didn't like with New Orleans. So he only had 2 points. We were right on that one. New Orleans shut him down, just like they did in both meetings last year. So looking at who I liked and who I didn't like, we had 11 successes, 5 failures, and 4 pushes. Gives us about a 65%, which is a solid D. For our first exam of the year, it's not great. So we got nowhere to go but up. Our sleepers, Trevor Lawrence was okay. Tony Pollard, a non-factor. Elijah Moore did all right. David Njoku was completely absent. So we got 50-50 on those. But next, we're going to take a look at who I like for week 2. So who do I like for week 2? Well, first, let's take a look at quarterbacks. First quarterback I like for week 2 is Derek Carr. That Arizona defense looked lost. They don't have their pass rushers from last year. They're just not, they just didn't put a lot of pressure on the quarterback last week. Derek Carr had good rapport with Davante Adams. He moved the ball around. You're going to see a good game from Derek Carr. Another quarterback I like for next week is Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz looked good in his matchup last week. Moved the ball around. He's got a lot of good weapons there. McLaurin, Dotson. So I really think that even the tight end there, I think you're going to see him just score a lot of points. Now he's still doing this typical Carson Wentz thing where he looks like a world beater and then he throws 2 interceptions. But he'll still get you fantasy points. He may not win you football games necessarily, but he'll get you fantasy points. And I see him continuing that against Detroit this week. Another quarterback I like this week, Jalen Hurts. Jalen looked really good, running the ball, passing the ball. If he continues looking like he did last week, Philadelphia's should have the Super Bowl in their sights. But he plays a Minnesota team this week that kind of had a down matchup with Green Bay last week. Didn't really see much of anything. They're not well tested. I think Jalen Hurts is going to do really well. Running backs I like this week. First is Leonard Fournette. What people don't realize with that New Orleans-Atlanta game was Atlanta ran all over New Orleans, just ran the ball very well. And it's overshadowed by the fact that New Orleans had that incredible comeback and won the game. But if they didn't, people would be talking about how well Atlanta ran the ball. Leonard Fournette looked great last week against Dallas, and he'll continue that. Brady's going to feed him the ball. He's going to do real well against that New Orleans defense. I also like Javonte Williams this week. He'll be playing the Houston Texans. Javonte had a good rapport with quarterback Russell Wilson. He was getting a lot of catches, a lot of touches. I think they'll continue that. They want to work him in the game plan, and they definitely will. He was looking good there. I think as Russell Wilson gets more confident, he'll look for that running back more. You'll see a lot more production from Javonte Williams. I also like D'Andre Swift this week. D'Andre Swift should be in your lineup every week, probably. You know, last year, he and Williams kind of went back and forth as to who was carrying the ball. When they get close to the goal line, Williams may get the ball to punch that in. But what you got to remember is that they're playing the Washington Commanders. Got to remember that name. And last week, the Commanders gave up a lot of points to running backs in the passing game. And that's one of the places where D'Andre Swift really does well. And so I think you're just going to see him pile up some points again this week. And it could continue throughout the season. We'll see. Last year, he kind of started like this, and then he got inconsistent. So we'll see how Detroit does and if Goff, likes him in the offense. Wide receivers I like this week. I like Jahan Dotson. He looked really good. Scored 2 touchdowns, so his point total was a little overinflated. I think you're going to see a lot of passing in that Detroit-Washington game. You're going to see Carson Wentz find Dotson a lot. I think as the season goes along, he's going to be comfortable with him. McLaurin will get their top corner. Dotson will come in at number 2. Has a lot of opportunity there. I like DJ Moore this week for the Carolina Panthers against the New York Giants. If you look at that game against the Browns last week, Robbie Anderson was the high receiver, but you take out that 75-yard touchdown catch, and DJ Moore was definitely the better option. You're going to see Baker Mayfield throwing the ball a lot. He's going to really want to win. I'm sure he's very disappointed in how things went down in that game, and so I just think he'll feed DJ Moore. The targets were there. He just needs to produce more. I also like Rashad Bateman this week. With Baltimore last week, you didn't really get to see the full effect of their offense. Lamar Jackson looked really good. It looked like he was staying in the pocket a lot more. They didn't have to do a lot to beat the Jets. As Peyton Manning said, when you throw 59 times in the opener, you're probably not going to win, and that's what the Jets did. But Lamar Jackson looked really good in the pocket. Normally he takes off running a lot, and he wasn't doing that in this game on Sunday. So I just think you're going to see a steady increase for Rashad Bateman, especially against this Miami team, because Baltimore is going to have to find more offense, because Miami's going to be more of a challenge than the Jets were. Tight ends I like this week. I like Gerald Everett for the LA Chargers against Kansas City Chiefs. Gerald Everett, with Keenan Allen out in a short week, I just think you're going to see him get a lot more targets. He saw some last week. You're just going to see that increase. Justin Herbert likes to throw the ball, talented quarterback. He'll find Gerald Everett in the passing game, getting the ball a lot. I also like Dalton Schultz this week for Dallas against Cincinnati. Cooper Rush has to throw the ball to someone. As soon as he came in that game, he found Dalton Schultz a few times. He's going to rely heavily on that. The Dallas offense doesn't have the talent at wideout it had last year. I think they'll get some folks back, but I think Dalton Schultz they're going to rely heavily on him. So I think he's a good play this week against Cincinnati. They're going to throw the ball, and Dalton Schultz will see a lot of targets. I also like O.J. Howard for Houston against Denver this week. If you watch that game with Houston Indianapolis, O.J. Howard was a solid part of that offensive attack. I just think you're going to see that increase. He's a talented guy, just couldn't get a consistent season going, injuries, play like that. So I just think he'll steadily increase, and I think he's a good play this week. That takes us to who do I think you should steer clear of this week. The first name I'm going to put on that list is Jameis Winston for the New Orleans Saints against Tampa Bay. I just don't think it's quite there yet. They know this kid. I think they know how to get to him. With an injured Alvin Kamara, they're going to have a rough go at it, and you may see a lot of Taysom Hill in there, a lot more like you did last week. So I would steer clear of Jameis Winston this week. Kyler Murray's another name I'd steer clear of. He just looked lost last week, and he doesn't have the talent on receiver. You know, his top receivers, A.J. Green, Hollywood Brown, they're just not getting open, and he's trying to make too much happen. There's just too much not going on in that offense, if that makes any sense. I just think he'll struggle against the Vegas Raiders, and I'd steer clear of him this week. So who don't I like at running back? Well, Clyde Edwards-Helaire against the Chargers. He had a decent game last week, point-wise. I just don't see that being pretty consistent. So I would steer clear of Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week. Another name I'd steer clear of is Michael Carter with the Jets. You know, he looked like he could be the clear-cut number one running back, but he's going to be facing a Cleveland Browns team that's good at stopping the run. I just don't see him getting any points this week. Who don't I like at wide receiver, or who should you steer clear of? Deontay Johnson for the Steelers against the Patriots. Patriots secondary is still, they're good. Tua got a lot of his yards on short routes, getting the ball in Tyreek Hill's hands short and having him run. Deontay Johnson's just, I don't think he's going to get open. I also think as George Pickens gets more comfortable in the offense, and as Mitchell Trubisky is leading that offense, he's going to spread that ball around. I just don't see Deontay getting the points this week. Another name I'd steer clear of is Julio Jones. I think he's kind of a sexy pick right now that Chris Godwin went out. Julio hasn't been the same receiver for a couple years. His final year in Atlanta, he just wasn't the same player he was as his younger self, and I think he'll get some points, but he's not going to get you a lot of points. So if you have better options, that's who I'd go with. I think they're going to run the ball a lot against that New Orleans team. I just don't. Julio Jones, when he played for Atlanta, would always get shut down by New Orleans. They know how to play him. So I just don't have a good feeling about it. I would steer clear of him. Who don't I like at tight end? Well, last week I liked this guy, and this week I'm telling you to steer clear of him. That's Dawson Knox. He had that horse collar, got injured early. That Tennessee pass rush, too, is going to be heavy, so I think they're going to pull him back to block a lot more. So there won't be a lot of routes for him. I just don't see him getting the points. There's too many options in that Buffalo offense, and they are not going to be running points up against the Tennessee team. Another tight end I'd steer clear of this week is Mike Gesicki with the Miami Dolphins against the Baltimore Ravens. He seems kind of out of his element. I don't know what's going on with him, but just didn't look good last week. I just don't see. I just don't see against that Ravens defense him racking up any points. Let's go ahead and look at some sleepers. Some sleepers I like for week 2. At quarterback, Jared Goff, a name from the past, but I think he'll get a lot of points this week. I think that Detroit-Washington game is just going to be a track meet. So I wouldn't trust Jared Goff to take me to the Super Bowl, but I would. I think he'll score a lot of points this week. At running back, a sleeper I like is Devin Singletary, Buffalo Bills against the Tennessee Titans. He looked good in that opener. I think he's going to earn a majority of the carries in that Buffalo offense, and I just think he'll do well against Tennessee. Wide receiver, I like Kendrick Bourne for the New England Patriots against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, as soon as he came in the game, he caught a 44-yard touchdown pass last week, and so if he can get in there and get play consistent, you know, they like his talent. I can see him doing well against that Pittsburgh secondary, especially they don't have TJ Watt, if they're not getting a good pass rush. And it depends on who's playing quarterback. If Mac Jones is in there, I think he'll have a decent game. If Brian Hoyer's in there, I think he'd actually have a far better game. When Brian Hoyer has played for the Patriots against the Steelers, he's done really well. And so if Brian Hoyer's in there, Kendrick Bourne will have a good game. Mac Jones is in there, I still think he's worth taking a flyer on. And finally, at tight end, I like Tyler Higbee for the LA Rams against the Atlanta Falcons. I just think there's not enough options there for Matthew Stafford. Allen Robinson didn't show up. You got Cooper Kupp, obviously, point machine, but you got to have something else there. Tyler Higbee, he'll be a good option. I think Stafford will look for him a lot more, and Tyler Higbee's worth taking a flyer on. Well, once again, thank you for watching, and enjoy week 2. Thank you very much.